Hello, hello. I'm Strider, your host here at Author in the Headlights, and I want to thank you for joining us. And those of you that haven't or they're new, if you hit that subscribe button, you won't miss a single one of our episodes. Today we've got Tim Facciola. Good morning, Tim.
Good morning, Strider. Thank you for having me on today.
Oh gosh, yeah. Hey, and you and I have known each other for a while, a couple of years now. I think you were one of the first people I interviewed at a Chanticleer conference in person. Yeah. And boy, was it rough back then, but we made it work.
Yeah. Made it work then, making it work
A
now.
little bit better now. You do epic fantasy. I think that's where that goes. And when I say epic, I mean long, 150 page books, and sort of 150,000
Uh,
words. How's that? Whoa,
at a minimum.
at a minimum, yeah. And so when you buy his books, you get a real read. Um, The Vengeful Realm series is where you started out with that, and I happen to know you wrote all three books before you had them published.
Correct. Yes.
And that in itself is an epic journey.
Oh, it was.
Oh man, because we have talked about it.
It's a humbling lesson in patience and you know what though, there's a degree of there was so much that I've learned in the time since I've published that from then to now, I feel like there's been an exponential learning curve, but from the time I started writing to the time I was ready to publish, exponential. So there's always more to learn, right?
There's always more to learn. There is always something out there. Yep. Now, this spring, like January, wasn't it? You put out a new book, but of kind of the same world.
Yes.
Tell us
So
about.
I have Ghost of Rainia, which is it's a prequel that can also serve as a standalone to the Vengeful Realm trilogy. Now, I wrote this even before A Vengeful Realm was
Oh,
published.
really?
So there was a lot of stuff in the works. Because when I was originally querying, this is back in 2018, I said to my editor, like, what do I do now? What do I do while, you're editing? And she was like, start working on something new, something totally different. And like you can't sell a book two if book one's still waiting to be sold. So having multiple, so she's like, write something totally different. And A Vengeful Realm, because it is so long, and once upon a time it was much longer. The first draft was actually
Yeah, I
278,000
think we
words.
talked about that too. Yeah,
So
shortened it a little bit.
shortened it a bit. Um, and in doing so, I had cut one character. And so I was like, okay, I'll give this character their own story. And so I started working through that in that time in between, editing and starting the query. And so as I was doing this, though, I realized like, wow, I don't want these to be two separate things. I want this to be interconnected. So, I wrote that I was able to write it in such a way that if you've read the trilogy, and then you go back in time and read the prequel, great. And there's no spoilers. There's still an air of mystery, an air of intrigue, and lots of Easter eggs still to be found for those who have read. But if you haven't read, you don't need additional context. It could be read in either order. It could be read independently. It could be a standalone. You could read just this book, never touch the trilogy, and have a completed and fulfilling story. Lots of plotting went into making that
I want to make
possible.
sure we talk about that. I have talked to so many authors that say, but I don't know how. I happen to be one of those. I am a pantser man. I sit down and I write because the vaguest concept of where I'm going. And that's not necessarily a great thing in one way, in that you can really get yourself lost and have to go back and throw things out because the story changes as you go and that thing no longer connects. So you can do a lot of wasted writing, although you can get some really interesting writing to it. Now, your Vengeful Realm series, what is the world building for that? Where does that
Sure.
come from?
So it's a Greco-Roman inspired world, purely speculative, but definitely drew a lot of influence from Spartacus's rebellion from Rome and, movies like Gladiator. And so I really loved the Roman aesthetic. I always was fascinated historically with gladiatorium. And so that was one story seed that I knew from the beginning when I sat down, like I want a story that looks and feels like this and has these sort of themes involved. And the second story seed was more of I wanted the mythology to feel real. I wanted the gods to have a very tangible presence in the mortal realm, and I wanted the divide between the divine realm and the mortal realm to not be so vast. I the gods to appear as flawed as mortals. So I wanted to kind of combine all of those things, and from that genesis came a Vengeful Realm.
That's cool. In fact, that really attracts me because I have done a lot of sword fighting in my life. In fact, I've got two separate suits of harness of armor. One which is a boiled leather cuirass, caraboled leather, and the muscleplature on it. And the other was metal doing the same thing.
Mm,
And to me, though it wasn't, it was a medieval version of the rebuilt of Roman armor, which was a thing. I just love it because okay, it's artsy, it's cool.
it's so cool. It's the craft. Like I have a couple friends who I've met through my authorhood, readers and their friends, and like who are armorers. And I was like, one of these days I want to commission, get like a full regalia, and support the people who have supported me. So armor is a beautiful thing. The veil of fantasy allows you to almost address real life issues, but there's almost a inhibition. It lowers the guard of the readers because they're allowed to inject themselves into the story and leave their biases and prejudices and own worldviews out. So maybe you can actually learn something, see something differently, realize that the world is bigger than just between your ears. Like,
I
I think
totally
fantasy
agree.
allows
I
that.
totally agree because you can see it from a different set of eyes that you never really thought about it that way before because we get so pigeonholed. We really do. And so that allows you to think of it like, I never thought of it quite like that. Yeah. So your Vengeful Realm series is the Scales of Balance, the Breaker of Chains, and the Age of the End,
Hmm.
and then a Ghost of Rainier. And that's kind of a prequel offshoot, but it's still the world. Okay. Now I get into the other part. How do you do it?
So there's a million different ways to plot. Oftentimes the way I'll teach it is it exists on a spectrum, right? The plotting spectrum can be a 1 to 2 sentence big picture overview. And for that, I really utilize the spook method. So SPOOC, spook method. It was in Deborah Chester, who's the author of the fantasy fiction formula. She goes on in depth. She has a whole book about plotting this way. Spook is the situation, the protagonist, the objective, the opponent or the obstacle, and then the climax. And all five of those things contained in a 2 to 3 sentence big picture view of the story. And that is the I think if you have that, this is my story from beginning to end in 2 to 3 sentences. It's a really great way, A, to keep you on track, to really cleave to the heart of the story. But even from a marketing perspective, you're able to have your elevator pitch even before you've written the book.
That's important, by the way, for those of you out there that haven't yet or that bump it. Man, you've got to have that smooth.
Hmm.
And elevator, yeah, talk to yourself in the elevator, talk to yourself in the bathroom, talk to, because you have to have it easy, straight, smooth, so that you know what you're talking about. How else can you explain to somebody else in 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're bored. If they just wander on, then they're somewhere else. You got to have it.
It's
Okay.
it and gotta have it, gotta be, and it's gotta be a quick draw too. It's not like something you can, well, basically, it just right off the bat, you gotta be able to go. So that is level one. Level two is more of like I try to write the back cover blurb even before I've written the book. Could I write a blurb to sell the book that I want to, this type of story I want to write? And there's times where I might not have the complete picture, but I understand the big the big plot points or the big thematic. I might not know the ins and outs just yet, but I have enough that I can at least craft something that's going to hook an audience. If you can write a blurb for the story prior to writing it, you at least have enough of an idea to keep you honest. Things can change, how and where and why, but the heart of the story is still very much there. The next stage, level three, this is where things start to get a little harder. This requires a little bit more of a know-how and an understanding of structurally, what are the beats you want to kind of hit. And that's writing a one-page synopsis. So if you can write a one-page synopsis, and like the authors that I work with from my author coaching side of business, um, like I if you want the most affordable feedback, write a one-page synopsis, because I will be able to look at that and see, based on what's here and what's not, where you might have gaps in your story. I might be able to find plot holes before you figure them out. Just by asking probing questions about what's here and what's not. Because what you tend to focus on in a one page um, generally showcases. Now, that can still be done at the spook level. Once again, situation, protagonist, objective, opponent, climax. If in those 2 to 3 sentences, you have more words that are dedicated to the character and then seemingly gloss over the objective, that might be an indicator that the inciting incident isn't clear. So we can identify these things at each level, basically, and start to figure it out before we get to the end. You submit it to an editor, and the editor goes, there really just isn't much this, or I feel like there's, this is great, but there's really no thematic development. Like, we can find those things generally at that level, if we spend the time crafting it. So level one is that 2 to 3 sentence. Level two, a blurb. Level three, a one-page synopsis. Level four is a plot outline, like a chapter outline. And depending on this is the level I go to, getting to a chapter outline. I want to see
Here's
exactly,
the magic.
this is where the magic happens, right? Getting into a chapter outline, seeing what is happening within each and every chapter. But those are the 5 different stages of plotting. That's the spectrum. And I think everyone should fit somewhere on that. Even if it's just, I have a vision of what I want to do, and I'm going to write my elevator pitch.
Yeah,
And it leaves enough freedom to explore,
it
because I know
does.
some people, they enjoy the exploration. Plotting is my favorite part. Then drafting is a bit of work. And then I love editing again. But drafting is the hard part for me. And I know that's not the same for other people. So,
No.
like, for those who like to explore as they go, being less granular on that plotting spectrum tends to serve them better. And at the end of the day, you just have to find the part of the process that works for you. But as we were talking about off camera, like, the series I'm working on now is a 4-book series. And I can tell you, I have a chapter outline of book one. I have a 7-point plot for book two, book three, book four. I know
I
exactly
knew it.
how,
I knew it. I knew it.
all
You wrote a
before
book on the book.
I wrote a book on the book. I know exactly where I'm going
Oh,
to end up at the end. At each point of each book, if you said, give me the midpoint of book three, I can flip to it and see, at the book midpoint of book three, this is what's going to happen, and this is how it's going to set up for this
that
and then
that
this, that, and the other
also
thing.
helps you write timely, where I write more, seat of the pants, okay? I have to go back and review and edit and change and correct. You already know where things are put, so you can go forward at a far faster pace. And I
I
do absolutely see the value in that.
I think I look at it as either front matter or back matter. And what I mean by that is we all have to put the effort in. We all have to put the work in. Whether you are if you're a pantser, you probably sit down, you start writing, you hit a wall, you go back, you work, you figure it out. So it's more on the back end, or
Got it.
it's either during the process takes a little longer, or on the back end, great, you've finished, and now you're having to, like, yeah, but you have this whole plot line that doesn't materialize, or you thought you were going this way but then you swerved and went that way,
Exactly.
and now we just need to, we need to condense and trim and cut. Whereas on the plotting side of things, I have very, and that's why I like the editing process, because my editing
Hmm.
is usually very clean, because my first draft is usually
Got
fairly
it.
clean
Got
because
it.
I've done all this work on the front end. And I'd say, the big thing about plotting for me is I focus more on the character. A lot of plot
Sure.
methodologies focus on the plot, which I get, it's important, but I like to do it in reference to the character. If each character who has a point of view, even if they don't, they have their own story within the story. So if I focus on that character's journey through the story, the actual plot will solve itself, but it's more of what is this character's journey and what is this character's journey and how do those two characters interact, and where and when do their plot outlines mesh together. That's
Right.
where I think the magic really takes place. If you extrapolate out and look at it as individual character arcs that make up a story, instead of trying to take a story and find the character arc within it.
All right, man, it is awesome, Tim, that you are willing, not only willing, but teach and train people how to do this too. And Tim, we have run out of time because we've used it, man. We have filled this up. Thank you so much. We
Thank
will
you.
meet
It's
again at
always a
conferences
pleasure.
because we do, and I love it. And I sat in on your classes too. So,
Well, I've always, as always, I appreciate it. I appreciate you and what you do for the indie author community.
hey, you bet. So, Tim Facciola, Vengeful Realm series, which is the Scales of Balance, The Breaker of Chains, The Age of the End, and Ghosts of Rainier. Until next time, Tim, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The rest of you, thank you for joining us here at Author in the Headlights, sponsored by DurhamandPublishing.com. And you can link to any of his work down below. Thanks again.